Hi, everyone. Welcome. I just want to thank you for joining us today in our webinar. My name is Kim Harkrider, and I'm the educational consultant at Let's Go Learn, supporting Precept Marketing and its customers. Today, we are presenting Driving Academic Success in Today's Educational Environment. It's presented by Melissa King and Michael DeSaro of Okeechobee Christian Academy. Just a little bit of housekeeping before we get started. If you have any questions during the presentation, please type them into the question box in your GoToWebinar control panel. You can also click on the orange arrow on the control panel to slide panel off the screen, just in case it's covering the presenter slides, and you can bring it back by clicking on the orange arrow again. Next, we will only be answering questions at the end of the presentation. Also consider waiting a few minutes before entering in your questions. Often our presenter answers users' questions they answer the questions as the presenter continues to present. So, with this large audience, it can be hard filtering through dozens of questions as they appear. We'll also be sharing a recording of this webinar as well as a PDF of the slides in the next few days. So you'll be able to access this content on demand. I would also like to introduce our CEO of Let's Go Learn. This is Richard Capone, and he'll go ahead and take it from here.
All right, thank you so much. Again, I want to thank Precept who helped organize all of this. We're real excited to be working with them to bring this webinar to you. It's going to be real exciting, and you'll get a lot of great information today. Let me just say a couple words. You know, a lot of stuff is really changing right now in the educational space, obviously because of the pandemic, but it's put pressure to advance technology use. It's put pressure on changing workflows. I know with Christian schools, a lot has happened. You have sometimes a lot of new students coming in, students who you don't know their abilities. You have a lot of changes, and so we're hoping this will give you some real-world ideas of what Okeechobee Christian Academy has done. I think this is a great start to sort of get you more information to make informed decisions. And obviously, you know, we have a technology product as well, and we hope that we could support you all. But really, this is about you guys getting the right information so that you can make the right choices. Before we actually, here real quickly, here's the agenda. We're going to jump real quickly into hearing from Melissa and Michael, and that's a bulk of the webinar. And then I will do a short technology demo, and then we'll open it up for Q&A. And the Q&A I think will be really, really interesting. Usually these kind of webinars, it's great to ask you know, people who are in the field, you know, making changes, helping students, questions about, you know, how they did what they did, right? So before we begin, I will ask everyone one poll question just to find out who you are. And this is sometimes helpful because it helps us frame our discussion. All right, so let me do this. So let's take a couple minutes to answer that questions, and I'll show you the results to everyone in real time. All right, there you go. So it looks like majority of people, 40% almost, are administrator, school principals at 25%, and we got some teachers, great, and then other, super. Okay, let me go back. So let me just quickly introduce our speakers. Melissa King is a principal, and as you know, principals are one of the largest or greatest influence on success at a site, right? It's really important to have leadership. And also, you know, Michael DeSaro as well, he's the data coach, and together this team has done incredible things at Okeechobee, and hopefully you guys will be able to learn from what they've done and, you know, get a lot of great ideas. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to both of you, and let me just switch presenters here.
Great. Okay. So I guess I need to go through back to that here. So basically, we are a small rural school. So our location, we're in a small rural community in South Central Florida. We have a population in the county of approximately 40,000, probably about 5,000 to 7,000 in the actual city of Okeechobee. And a lot of people like to come to Florida, obviously, for the weather. But Okeechobee itself is a bass fishing. It's very well known for its bass fishing. There's lots of sunshine. We have great food. And it's just a great little community that we have here. Lots of cows. People don't realize there's so many cows in Florida, but there are lots of cows in Florida, and we have a lot of them here in Okeechobee County. So a quick glance at what Okeechobee Christian Academy is. We are a K-12 school. So we start with kindergarten, we end with graduating seniors. We have approximately 200 students. About 55 of them are kindergarten to second grade. We have about 80 students in third through sixth grade, and we have about 65 students in secondary, which is what we consider our 7th through 12th grade. We are a fully accredited school. We are the only fully accredited private Christian school in Okeechobee County. We are accredited from FCCPSA, which is a Florida association, and then Cognition accreditation as well. We have moved in this year to a 1-to-1 Chromebook to student ratio. That is something that we strive for, and COVID kind of helped us along with that. So I guess if you have to look for some of the positives, there you go. One other big accomplishment that we've had in the last couple of years is we are now a site-based College Board testing center. So 2019, we gave our first actual College Board test. In fact, we're getting ready to give another one here in a couple of weeks. So with that, I will turn it over to Melissa, and she can talk about our wish list.
Thank you, Michael. So back in March, and we'll get to the timeline in just a second, I had a wish list that I needed to get accomplished moving into the COVID time of testing, which began March 2020. We were looking for, at that time, we didn't know whether we were still going to need to test our students at the end of the year. Many of our students attend on scholarship students, about 70% of them do. And we do have a requirement that we have to offer a state mandated standardized testing at the end of the year. So we weren't sure whether that was going to be a requirement still. So we needed something to accomplish that, because currently the only testing that we had available was the paper pencil. We were in the middle of open enrollment, and we needed a virtual option to be able to test our students that were coming into the school. Because of COVID and some of the shutdown orders, it wasn't able to have families come in and bring students, and it just kind of wasn't safe for us to have our staff testing those students face to face. So we needed a virtual option for that. And we always, anytime we're looking at a new test, we like to test a sample group of students to see how our students are performing against those that are actually coming in, so we get a good baseline. We had just changed our math curriculum in several of our grades, and I was looking forward to seeing some data on how that curriculum had helped some of our students' growth in math and fill in some of those holes. And without some sort of testing at the end of the year, that wasn't going to be an option to see how that curriculum had performed. And we also we want students to be able to continue learning over summer if they had any kind of academic struggles throughout the year. And so if our students finish the school year in elementary with a C average, we require them to do some sort of summer work, which in past has been workbooks that they turn in right before the school year begins, the next school year begins. And it's optional for students that have a B or an A average. But with everybody being at home, it wasn't possible to get those books distributed, order, collect funds. So we were looking for a virtual option for that as well. So all of those together were things that we just had rolling around. And so this is our timeline kind of how Let's Go Learn came into OCA, and it came really quick. But we have a motto here at school. It's adapt, adjust, and overcome. It's taken loosely from some military slogans that are out there, but it's just basically roll with the punches. You can't do anything about it. COVID was here. We couldn't do anything. So we had to figure out a way to make some changes that were better for our academic community. So going back through some emails and some notes, March 13th, 2020 was our last day on campus before some of the shutdown orders for the state of Florida came into play. So we were leaving for spring break, knowing that our kids would be home for one of those weeks. They were kind of giving us that we would be home for 2 weeks. So we had, in my mind, I was thinking, okay, we'll be coming back in 2 weeks, so it's not that big a deal. But March 13th, we were here the last day, kind of making plans to come back. And shortly after that, just a few days later, we found out, nope, not going to happen. March 25th, I got an email from Precepts Marketing that was advertising free pilot program for Let's Go Learn. And it was just the one of many emails that started coming in advertising different things because of COVID happening. Everybody's trying to take on getting their programs out as quick as they could. But I looked into that, and April 21st, we met with Precepts Marketing, Greg and Amy, and they showed us a webinar on Let's Go Learn, on the platform, its uses, how we could be using it, and the options and the perks that were available. Obviously, the keyword free there was a big plus and bonus for us because we were coming to the end of the school year where you're pretty much spent on your budget. By April 30th, we had our pilot account created for Let's Go Learn, and we were already testing staff kids that evening because staff kids are some of the best guinea pigs. So we had probably a pool of about 15 in various grade levels that as soon as that we had the green light for our account being created, we were testing kids that evening. And then that next, the first week in May 1st through 7th, we were testing all the students school-wide, K-5 through 12th grade. And you can see down there in the timeline, we did the DORA to all the grades, which is the English portion of it. We did the ADAM math portion for K-5 through 7th grade, the DOMA, which is going to be the higher level, the pre-algebra, algebra 1, algebra 2. We did those for students that were in our pre-algebra and higher classes. And when we got those results back, we noticed that there were some holes and some gaps based on those results. So we went ahead and gave the ADAM to any of our other students that had taken the DOMA so that we could kind of get them back working on the EDGE program. And May 14th came along and we were communicating with our stakeholders, our student progress that we had successfully done testing school-wide. And we were beginning the process of, to put in perspective, around the middle of May was when essential workers kind of started going back and some things were starting to open, and our parents who had been home with our students for this whole time helping them with their Zoom lessons, we had live instruction each day for our students, they were having to go back to work. So caretakers for students at home were having to change and adjust. So with the EDGE program, that's when we started relying more on that because it was altogether just built in the reading and the math where they could watch the lessons on their own and get some successes there. So to give you an example of some of that communication that we were doing within that first time in May was on our Facebook page. This was this is what it similarly looked like on our Facebook page, but we had done almost 187 hours within the first week. Our students had completed that many hours of EDGE, and we had already given them the option, those that were at a B average or lower, about signing up for the summer program to continue their EDGE learning over summer. So that was huge for us. And so I'm going to kick it back over to Mr. DeSaro so he can talk about some of the improvements. Being our data coach, he has that well under wraps.
Thank you. So we kind of took the progression through the summer, and one of the biggest things that we noticed were students grew really quickly, and they just were able to get into the program. And especially for those students that were struggling students, it really made a big difference. It reminds me of one of our 5th grade students who, Melissa and I had talked about this. For several years, this student really struggled. We determined that it was okay to move him on, but we always had that little thing in the back of our heads, is that, what do we do with him? How do we really get into meeting his educational needs? And we had him go on Let's Go Learn and do the EDGE program, and he got into it, and within a couple of months over the summer had grown over a half a year. So it was an amazing feat that he was able to do, and now he's doing very well in 6th grade. So we're very proud of him, and we have many student stories like that. This school year, we did have, we've completed over 14,000 lessons, and we've logged almost 3,000 hours on the EDGE program. So it's definitely a program that we've been able to get a lot of use out of. One of the greatest things that I like about the program is the adaptability of it. So knowing that if a student is low in one particular area in math, that's where it's going to target those lessons. And you find that especially older students, have some of the holes from their basic skills, especially in math. And that's where we were really trying to take those students and build that foundation so that they could move on to the next level.
Yeah, and not only that, Mr. Starr, it gives them that confidence because then they can go to those next lessons. They've got those holes filled in, and then they're able to be successful in the class the next day, and it helps build their confidence as well.
Absolutely, absolutely, and that's half the battle right there is their buy-in and they're wanting to do it and feeling good about themselves.
Right.
Another statistic we found is that over a third of our students showed above average growth in the LGL assessments. We give the assessment basically at the beginning of the year, at the middle of the year, and at the end of the year. So we're using it as a benchmarking tool, and we're really seeing a lot of growth out of it. So it's great. And the correlation you can see there is of those same students, most of them averaged over 20 hours of instruction on the EDGE program when they were showing the growth. So there's a direct correlation there with the growth in the EDGE usage. And then this last little part here, we kind of talked about with that one particular student, and there, like I said, there were multiple students that showed over a half a year growth in a very short amount of time. And this is all going on at the same time that across the country we're hearing about the COVID slide. Students are regressing and they're not able to keep up, and we're going to have, you know, basically students starting a year behind, and our students actually were moving ahead. So this program was really a good platform and a launching pad for us to be able to keep our students moving in the right direction.
Yeah, and one little thing I want to add to that was when we're talking about private schools where there's a tuition aspect to it, when our parents are signing that contract and we're agreeing to give them a year's worth of instruction, that was one of the driving forces that we knew that we had to keep our academic gain pretty consistent with where we were before our students left, because you run the risk of parents coming back saying, you were not able to give us what we're paying you for, we'd like a refund. And so we had that was a big part of why we needed to keep our academic rigor as what we did. So when we look at some of the public schools that were in our area, they did not do as much as we were doing, and parents were coming saying, I've got my kids at work with me and my coworkers' kids are here with me, and our OCA kids are just doing so much more throughout the day, and they're able to move forward with instruction and learning that, you know, people have asked us, you know, how do you think your kids did with the COVID slide? And between Let's Go Learn and keeping our rigor the same, I don't really think we had as much of a slide that some of the other schools experienced.
Right. I mean, you talk about that. I have a lot of friends that are teachers in the public system in here and in other states, and that in some of them just now going back and they're like, wow, y'all have been back all year and look at the gains that you've made, and they're you know, they're just getting started again. So again,
Yeah.
We were able to kind of beat that slide, which is where we wanted to be.
Right.
So, you know, now that kind of is the what of what we were using, but how did we do it? So there's some definite key things that you have to be able to make this successful. So Melissa, I'll turn it back to you to talk about the staff.
Yeah, so that's our staff from last year at the beginning. That was our team picture from open house night. And so we would have never expected that our school year would have ended so differently. But that team of people right there, they pitched in and they had complete buy-in to the program. They knew how important it was for us to be able to maintain and stay open for the kids in our community, to be able to do what we do for this school year, because we knew there was going to be an end. We just didn't know how long. But staff buy-in is so important, and it took some time. It took them stepping out in faith, saying, okay, we're going to trust you guys as the leadership of school, and we're going to give it a go, and we're going to see how it is. And I think them seeing their own kids take the test, their own kids get to use the program, that helped with the staff buy-in. But staff buy-in was huge because, like I said, once we did the initial testing, we put our kids on the Let's Go Learn instruction. So it took a lot of these people here working. And one of the things that we agreed to when we did the pilot program was professional development. And sometimes you look at professional development and you're like, really, is it really going to be that worthwhile? Is it really going to be that great? And that was my thinking. And so when I saw that line item on there, if you have to have so many hours of instruction from Let's Go Learn training on how to use the program, I was like, we'll see how it goes. But when we did have that webinar that one day, the teachers were fantastic. They explained the program. We had already been using it for a little bit, but they went more in depth with some of the options, and that just increased the buy-in. And I'll say this about the staff as well. In talks of the training, they were very receptive to listen to some of our concerns, and because we had used the program and done so many hours, we found, you know, little things here and there with questions that confused us, and we gave them feedback. And you know, Richard, your team was so great with getting our questions answered or making some little adjustments and changes to clarify some things. So it helped when our staff saw that you guys were invested as well, and you guys were willing to make some changes and really give us some feedback. That helped with the buy-in as well.
That's great to hear. Our customer success team is really fantastic. I mean, they all work together, and you know, in a team effort to support schools. A lot of different specialists have different specialties as well. And one of the things we're doing now too is we're really trying to bring them into our product development process, so that we get those feedback in a more timely manner, and we could process it better, because that's always a tough thing. There's so many great ideas, you know, from teachers using it. So it's great to make sure we get that and we can update our product. I have a quick question. Did your staff previously use any kind of online testing or anything like that before? Did they have a background in that?
Maybe some of my public school teachers that had come from the public school system had probably done some sort of testing like that before, but no, it was all digital stuff, was all new. All of us had crash courses in Zoom and Google Classroom and all that stuff. I learned how to code a little bit to make announcements on our management system. So we were all learning as we were going. So it was the technology aspect of it. It was all new.
Yeah, we were talking this morning. I said, I think we took about a 10-year course in 2 months. So
yeah, I think the biggest technology, we had Scantron machine we had just gotten that year to help with the teachers grading tests easier. So that was the extent of the data that they were getting back as far as that kind of immediate feedback. So
right.
Got it. Wow, Scantron machines still exist?
Yeah.
Of course they do. I mean,
they do.
when I was a kid, I remember being able to help.
They're a lot fancier now. They're a lot fancier.
Yep.
And then go ahead, Mr. Sorrow.
Well, I was just gonna say, I mean, having your staff buy-in is important, but once you have your staff buy-in, if you don't have the students buy-in, it's a you're defeated.
Big flop.
Yeah. So our students, we've got a couple of pictures here. They receive a little incentive program that we do, and we started that this year with these gold beads, and they love it. We just put gold beads on a ring every time they make a gold status in their Edge lessons, and you can see here they're so excited. They clip them to their book bags and they carry them around. So it's just been a great little incentive for them, and you'd be amazed how even some of the the older elementary kids, they get into it as well. They want to know if hey, Mr. DeSoro, I lost my beads. Can you find it for me? Or, we've got to figure this out, because we like those hanging off of our book bags. You can see here's some more gold beads, and if you'll notice the little gold balloons, our first grade teacher, she's into giving them. They have little parties, I guess you could kind of say, or celebrations with gold balloons when they meet a certain level or a certain number of gold lessons. So
when they fill their ring, they get a gold star balloon with their name on it, and that's like the big deal, that they get to go out to dismissal with these gold star balloons. But
absolutely,
you can see the one there. She's got 2 rings and working on her 3rd ring. That's how many gold lessons she's done and accomplished.
What's great about this incentive system, just so everyone knows, I think the audience doesn't know, but everyone gets their own personalized course. So even students who are behind or students who are ahead, everyone is earning gold badges for lessons at their exact level. So it's a great equalizer. And so it's really
it's a lot different than saying, okay, you're going to get a gold bead if you get an A on the chapter 3 test. Well, not all your kids are going to get an A on the chapter 3 test, but your kids can most certainly do 3 lessons that are catered to how they tested on their assessment, get those gold, and put their beads on that way. So like you said, it's very much based on their abilities, their current abilities.
Right, and I think that's one thing that really sets this program apart is the adaptability, because you have a student and you're really trying to find out, how can I make this student successful? So going back to where they are, meeting the student where they are, and then building their foundation from where they are is the key to making them successful, so that when they actually get up to where they should be, they're able to continue to build their foundation, their house, their whatever you want to call it. They're able to build it quickly, and they're able to build it in a solid way. So
Yeah.
that's something that I've really noticed that I think is just a great part of the program. I think that's probably what sets it apart in my mind from any other ones. Parent involvement is also key, because once you leave the school, once you step out back into the cars in the afternoon, we have to have we have to keep it going. So it's been very positive with us. Most of our parents seem to love the fact that they have those tailored lessons that they can work on at home, they can work on them at school, and they're really trying to bridge those gaps, which is what every parent wants for their child. I wanted my child to be successful. So we've really found that the parent involvement is great.
So let me ask you
Back
about
to
parent involvement.
Okay, go ahead.
Did you have specific new programs to reach out? Like, were you just doing emails? Did you also have any kind of Zooms with parents, or what are some, because it's a difficult thing. Parents are busy, right? And the chaos of life. And how do you reach them?
So we were doing a lot of emails back when COVID was there and we were all home. It was emails. Our teachers were doing live Zoom lessons for their instruction each day. So if it was they were needing something, we were all pretty much available, kind of face to face, but through Zoom and with our Facebook page. A lot of feedback got given out that way. One of our parents that I had, it was I think it was a 3rd grade student. This was when parents were getting ready to go back to work. They misread some of the stuff, and they thought that their child was going to be doing the Let's Go Learn in addition to their curriculum, because for the last 2 weeks of school, we pretty much did away with some of our actual textbook materials, and they just used the Edge to kind of alleviate some of that pressure of, okay, we've got bills to pay and we haven't been working and there's no time, and I'm tired of teaching my kid and I don't understand some of this stuff, to make it easier for them. And they're like, I don't know how my kid's going to do this Edge and the stuff. And so it was a principal conference with them saying, no, it's going to get easier. Trust me, just, give it some time. But parent involvement is huge. So if it was a thing of Mr. DeSaro was our Let's Go Learn technology guru, and if they needed help with their device or what kind of device they were using, because we are fortunate that most of our kids had a device at home. So if they didn't, we tried our best to get them a Kindle from school or some of the student laptops that we had. We had some parents that donated some older ones. We got them whatever it was that they were needing before we were actually one-to-one, and they would jump on Zoom with Mr. DeSaro and he would walk them through, okay, this is how you do, this is what you do. I had a student email me, she was in 7th grade, and said, Ms. King, I can't pass this lesson on Let's Go Learn. Can you try to help me? So I logged in as her and tried to do it. And we, I gave her some feedback and accomplished, but Zoom was key for us as far as still being able to be somewhat face-to-face, and Facebook and emails, like you said.
That's great.
That's something important that I noticed earlier. We just became a one-to-one Chromebook this year. So when all of this first started taking place, every student had a different kind of device, whether it be that we were trying to get them on phones or tablets or iPads or desktops or whatever device they had at home. So that kind of,
we didn't get our Chromebooks this year until January. Right. So everybody and their brother was buying Chromebooks, and so you just were kind of on the waiting list of when you ordered. And so we ordered our Chromebooks in August, September time, and we didn't get them until January. So by the time you get them all set up, so it can be done. We were just fortunate that most of our kids had devices, or we were able to, find them. My computer guy piecing together things to make one computer so they could have access.
You know, now our system, the Lessons Edge, actually works completely on mobile devices.
Yeah.
We had some incompatibility in the past, but now, so in theory, with kids, they have such good eyes, they can actually use mobile phones if they wanted, as long as they have a headset or something to get distracted. So yeah, it's interesting.
Just
But,
the technology adjustments that you guys have done has helped with our students, because it's a smoother transition to get them onto it rather than some of the different platforms that were there before. So just the changes, like I said, that you guys have done on your end with Let's Go Learn have been fantastic.
Right, and that kind of takes us into some of the challenges. That was a big part of our challenge in the beginning, was being able to get students logged in with the different kinds of devices, the different platforms that they were using, the different browsers that they were using, which ones worked, which ones didn't, having to have the Learning Upgrade downloaded onto a device and things of that nature. That was definitely a challenge for a lot of our students and parents, because you know, when they're at home, a lot of them didn't know exactly what that was, or are they supposed to go in through Learning Upgrade? I can remember meeting with lots of people who would say, well, I got through so many lessons and now it wants me to buy something. I'm like, oh, you're going into it the wrong way.
The wrong way.
There, but you can't actually go into it that way. So those are some of the challenges, but hey, we were able to overcome them and found the success through it.
Yeah.
Well, that's great. All right, super. Well, I'm going to go ahead and jump into a quick just demo, and then we'll jump into the panel. And I can see some questions are coming in, so we'll save up those questions, and then the questions will be for everyone. So I am going to go ahead and try to share my screen here. Make sure I can do this. Can you guys still see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. So just to give everyone sort of a top high-level overview, so Let's Go Learn, our platform is not, it's overall a platform, right? And so our goal is to provide lots of different services as you grow, because we know not everyone needs everything right away. Sometimes some people will just need diagnostic assessment so that you could assess new students coming into the school. You know, maybe you need this to help write IEPs. Maybe you need it to help measure growth for reporting purposes. So whatever it may be, we have diagnostic assessment that finds each student's zone of proximal development. We then, because our assessments are very granular and diagnostic, the data is very actionable. So you could use it to drive small group instruction. You could use it for lots of things in the classroom. And then also we have the EDGE series, which is the personalized learning that Michael and Melissa talked about, which is in math and reading. And then finally, we also have progress monitoring. So if somebody does have a progress monitoring initiative where you need to test small quizzes weekly or monthly, or maybe it's for a student with IEPs where you need to legally do progress monitoring, we have that as well. And then all that data feeds into the same vertical aligned data set. And then of course we have PD. So that's sort of how the whole platform works. One thing I did want to point out that's different about our assessments is that we actually built our assessments on a diagnostic model. Unfortunately, most tests out there today in education are really more benchmark tests, meaning they're trying to test where is the student relative to fourth grade. Maybe they'll go down to third, but they're really just hovering around a grade level, which is great if you want accountability. But our assessments, you know, regardless of the students in sixth grade or fourth grade, it goes up and down to find the student's actual instructional point, right? So in a case like this in math, we look at math as 44 subtests across foundational math, and we find the student's actual instructional point in each one of these. And that's why, as they were pointing out how this one student was really struggling, you said, and finally they were able to, you know, really improve quite a bit. It's because we find those little gaps, those areas that no one really realized. Like, oh, wow, this student doesn't know their 2D shapes, right? Sometimes a student may not know something that's language-based in mathematics, and as a result, that affects all of the word problems. So we try to find those, and that's the way a diagnostic model of assessment works. The same thing is in reading. Reading, there's less subtests. There's 7 or 6 here, plus phonemic awareness. So again, we go up and down and find out really what the student's profile is. I think, you know, the difference with us when I founded Let's Go Learn with Dr. McCollum from UC Berkeley, our goal was to produce data and information for teachers to answer, what do I do next, right? And that's always been our guiding principle all along. As far as our products, we have the assessments, DORA in reading, math is Adam, and then higher math is pre-algebra and algebra, DOMA pre-algebra. We also have the formative assessment. All this data that's sort of interesting is people don't realize, but it all feeds into this engine, right? In some sense, you could think about it as, we call it active pulse. It's actually the student's ability in math and reading that's very granular. It's like a doctor's model. This is where the doctor's chart, all the data flows in. Anytime you take a test, whether it's the very beginning of the year or you take ongoing tests, it feeds in and then it updates your automatic math or edge course, right? Or ELA edge or math edge. And then also teachers can assign lessons as well as modify lessons. So it's really quite dynamic, and it's it's taken us a long time to get to this point in terms of technology, but this is what's really necessary, right? You want real-time personalized learning. As far as the edge, I do want to point something out. It's sort of interesting. People don't realize, but there's really 3 reasons why it's very powerful and effective. One is that it targets the zone of proximal development. That means the student's actual instructional point. And that's really important. So if a 5th grader's, in 5th grade, you don't want to just target 5th grade math or 4th grade. You have to go up and down and be really granular. That's really important. The second part is employing effective teaching methods, and then finally retention. And actually, I realized, I have a slide on each of these. So initially, you have to have a good assessment up front. A lot of computer-based programs that teach math use a placement test, right? A placement test just says, I'm going to place this child across a single scale, 1st grade, 2nd grade, 3rd grade, 4th grade. No, that's not the way to go. It's not a single scale. We see it as 44 points or 7 points in reading. So really, this is the key. If you don't spend enough time up front doing the proper analysis, you get the wrong instruction, and then the next 20 hours the student spends on the system is going to be giving them lessons that are too hard or too easy. The second part is when you give students instruction, it has to be engaging, right? In this day and age, if somebody struggled with something before, it's got to be engaging, and that's why if you use animations, you use songs, we use music in all of our lessons, and then also a game-like practice at the very end of it. This is really important because this allows students to actually cognitively learn at their level, and that's really important, I think. The final thing is the reinforcement, and Melissa and Michael adding the beads, the gold beads, is really great because that gives an extra motivator. We have motivation built into the system as well. We have a badge system, so it encourages students to go back and do review. And so I think that's really important. You don't want people just to blow through the material. You need them to actually finish every lesson at a 95%. And so that's why you have to have something built into the system so that you have really, really high mastery, all right? ELA Edge has over 260 lessons. I think I skipped a slide. Math has around 300. And this is what's interesting. All of these lessons are available to every student. It depends on how they do on the assessment. So even if you have a 3rd grader who is advanced, they would actually get advanced lessons. So it's really about our math covers K9 through algebra. And then our reading is foundational reading up through 6th grade. So we're not going to go into, obviously when you start getting to higher grade levels, you're going into writing, really intense writing. You're going into genres, poetry, research. But we're really about foundational reading, which is obviously important for content learning. Let me go ahead and just show you something real quickly, and then we'll get to the panel. So I'm logged into the system right here. And what I want to show you is just some of the data, right? So this class has finished the assessment. We'll take a look at their scores. If I look at the reading scores, we see the scores are all in grade levels. So this student here, this is a 6th grade class. High frequency words at a high 3rd grade, word recognition, mid 8th grade. Comprehension here for this one student, Leslie, is at high 2nd grade, 2.83. So the idea here is this data is all understandable. We don't say something like 725 or 30th percentile. That's really very confusing to people, but with grade level scores, everyone understands it, whether you're a teacher, student, parent, administrator. So that's the way it works. If I want to have a report, here's a parent report, and it's very understandable. We want this to be easy for everyone to read. So how Leslie reads words, it talks about her decoding skills. How Leslie understands words, talks about vocabulary, how she puts it all together using vocabulary and comprehension strategies. And then we have a profile. So there's no shortage of data. Not everyone is going to necessarily give this report to a parent, and here's tells you what you can do at home. But for those parents who are concerned, right, this is great to have this. As soon as the student's done with assessment, you have these reports available. In math, it's even crazier because math is really 44 subtests. So if we look at mathematics here, these are just strand scores, numbers and operations, measurement, data, geometry, algebra. But where it's really powerful is when you flip to numbers and operations. I could look at my class and say, let's take a look at my class in terms of fractions right here. I see all the scores, sort from low to high, high to low. If I want to see what that actually means, I can select fractions, hit instructional placement, and now I see my class and the actual skills that need to be taught. So High has actually mastered all the fractions. Nadine is working on representing fractions. These 2 students here are working on subtracting fractions. These 5 students are working on multiplying and dividing fractions. So I literally can create a small group with 2 clicks of a button, right? So this is quite amazing. And the reason why this is possible is because, again, we work on a diagnostic model, right? We're not a summative test or a quick quiz or a quick screener. We're a fundamental diagnostic assessment that gets great data. Anyway, once you have this data, it really opens the doors for all sorts of initiatives, whether you want your teachers to understand their class better, whether you need it to measure growth, whether you need it to do the instruction, which we have the edge we talked about. And so we feel like, this is really, really an important foundational step for any kind of organization. I don't want to show it anymore. I think I just wanted to give you guys a quick taste. Why don't we go ahead now and let me stop sharing. And let's turn our cameras back on and we'll go ahead and go into Q&A. All right, excuse me. So let's see.
We have a question.
Okay,
can you hear me okay? Okay, great. Is LGL designed to replace our math curriculum or for more remediation?
It's meant to be supplemental, right? I mean, you're still going to have your core program, and you obviously you still want some kind of program where you can work with your students. Sometimes you need interaction, people working together, problem solving, but it's meant to be an independent tool. There is also a whiteboard tool though too, so that you can actually play any of the lessons as a whiteboard, so that the teacher can actually present something like to the whole class. So sometimes it's nice to have a song and an animation teach y-intercept, right? It's a lot more engaging sometimes than somebody being on a whiteboard or on a chalkboard. So.
You mentioned the songs. I've got last year it was a 5th grader, a 7th grader, and a 10th grader. And oftentimes my kids were singing the songs that went along with the lessons, not while they were doing the lessons, much later in the afternoon after they were doing something else. They were still singing some of those math songs to help teach them the concepts. So they do stick with them.
Yeah, that's funny. I remember there was one student at school where he said, the songs, they're sort of irritating. They get stuck in your head. Then he goes, oh, I guess that's the point, right? And you're right. It's like rise over. I always think of rise over run. That's how I think about it. I think of rise over run. It's sort of alliteration. But yeah, you need that.
The songs do stick. Yeah.
See some other questions.
One of the other things, when you were talking about the curriculum or whether it was supplemental, we had a hurricane day where we had to close school this school year, obviously being in Florida, and we were able to switch to a virtual day and have our students do edge instruction at home because they didn't have books, they didn't have supplies, so we didn't actually lose a day on our calendar because of edge. We were able to say, okay, you guys need to go in and do a couple lessons in these, give them some other online activities. And even though it wasn't a curriculum lesson, we knew that they would be getting some solid instruction that day, even though they were home and it was being done virtual.
One of the questions is, how does edge align? And edge aligns with modern mathematics, right? So we cover the full broad. I think, it was 10, 15 years ago, math became more than numbers and operations that really broadened to cover algebraic thinking, geometry, measurement. And so today people have a much more broad interpretation of math. And then in terms of reading, EDGE is really covering foundational reading, and we also cover grammar. So we're not going to cover as much in writing. And we sort of see ourselves, when do you need a diagnostic? It's when somebody is struggling in the foundations, right? Foundational math, foundational reading. If you can't read 7th grade passage and process that data and answer questions about it, you know, the next day, then your comprehension is too low. And so that's what we're trying to boost. But we're not going to, EDGE is not going to, you know, replace core curriculum, especially in ELA, because in ELA, that's broader than reading. So even though we cover some of the ELA, like a grammar, which is important.
And I do, to go back with it, talking about is EDGE necessarily like just grade level? Is it aligned grade level wise? I think if I'm understanding that question correctly, it's more of not necessarily grade level wise, it's individually student wise. So it's not going to say, okay, well, all of this, you know, you're going to use all of this part of the curriculum. We're going back to where that student is and putting the curriculum where they are, meeting them where they are.
Yeah, and so that's why we did, even though the reading portion is geared to some of those foundations, we still tested all of our kids when we had the opportunity to see if any of them did have holes. Because like you said back at the beginning, a lot of the people that were on today are administrators. You have a lot of different challenges that you face. Like I know coming into my position, I had some years where you know, the teacher just didn't really understand that particular concept, how the curriculum was teaching as well. So they may have skipped over it and not done as thorough a job, or they just didn't do it at all. So I inherited some problems with some of our older elementary kids, just on some of the teaching that had been done years prior. So it was important for us to go back and see, okay, where are the holes for some of these students, and where are the holes that we had from using the same curriculum year after year without maybe some other enrichment or pulling some other things in?
I see a good question here, and it's how do you balance a normal day with using your core, like BJU or whatever core material you're using, and EDGE? So what was, how did you guys do that moving forward? Obviously, during the pandemic, it was different, but.
Right. So we saw a lot of growth in our upper elementary grades, like 4th, 5th, and 6th. And I attribute a lot of that to because they've taught Abeka for so long, they have that mindset of, okay, you do some solid instruction, you do some practice, and then you have some seat work time. And so they're incorporating some of those same procedures into the classroom, but you're always going to have those early finishers, those fast finishers that just fly through the material because they are advanced. That EDGE is going to help them because it's moving them on to lessons that are more advanced than what they would be able to get. So it's like a lot of enrichment for them, because we can't forget about those kids that are doing really well in our class. It's not just for the low performers with holes. It's the ones who, okay, I already know all this stuff, Miss So-and-so or Mr. So-and-so, we need to get the ball rolling. I want to learn about some harder math stuff, or I want to learn some bigger vocab words. It gives them a challenge as well on their own level. So I think with ours, it's dedicated time, like in our secondary math classrooms, they're doing, my one teacher, she does, they have to do 2 EDGE lessons a week, and she takes those 2 lessons that they do because it's on their own individualized level. She averages them and gives them a grade. So they don't get as many incentives or gold beads, although if they wanted the gold beads, we would give them. But here it's their grade that they're responsible for. So it's built into, when COVID hit and our kids were home, the word homework had a really bad connotation because they were all home doing the work. So we changed homework. We don't do homework anymore. We do study skills. And that encompasses the work that we do at home and the work that we do at school, because it's all going to be study skills. So we changed our categories a little bit. And so it's a study skills thing that they're doing, whether it's at home or here. That's how we're kind of fitting some of those in. And really and truly, the lessons don't take long. So it could be a bell ringer in the beginning of a class. It could be, you know, hey, we got done with our lessons 5 minutes early. We've got some extra time. Go ahead and take out your Chromebooks and do a lesson. It can be something like a challenge as far as, hey, on the weekend, see if you can get 1 or 2 done. There's a lot of different ways that you can incorporate it. And it is so good at remediation. It's important to make some time for it, because if you're filling in the holes before you get to some of that grade level instruction that they're not quite ready for, your lesson that you've prepared based on the curriculum is going to go so much easier and so much better because you've filled in those quick little holes that they had before getting to that point. So it's important.
A comment about that, one of the questions is, how do you balance your normal curriculum? Let's say you know you're about to teach, and this is a little higher, Pythagorean theorem. I'll just use this because it's an easy one to use. If you look at the data and you choose, if you know what standard Pythagorean theorem is, even if you may not be using standards, right? It doesn't matter, that you still have to figure out there is a way to identify it. We then will show you what are the precursor skills. So for Pythagorean theorem, you need to know exponents, you need to know basic algebra, you know, and so then it'll actually, I'm sorry, go ahead. Oh, and triangles too, you know, knowledge of right triangle.
Yeah.
So it actually shows those 3 other subtests. You say, ah, look at this. You know, Richard doesn't know what a right triangle is. So you could actually queue up in their study skills or their individual time. They could do those lessons ahead of time the week before. And so that's a little bit more of an advanced use of the data, right?
Yeah.
And that's something you would do with our, you know, customer success specialists would train you how to do that. But that's a great way of incorporating the 2 as a supplement.
Yeah.
A lot of questions actually. So one is, okay, let me just answer this. So Adam, DOMA pre-algebra and DOMA algebra are math assessments. You take whatever one you need. Once you have a license, you can give kids whatever you need to. Generally speaking, Adam is K7, and then pre-algebra 7, 8, and then algebra obviously is either 8th or 9th grade. And so you can take whatever you need to. All of them feed in and will generate an edge course.
Let me give a word of caution, because a couple of years ago, probably 5 years ago, we were using the Let's Go Learn assessment part, the diagnostic test. The school was paying for the tests, but there was no research or looking into how to read those tests and the reports and stuff like that. So we moved away from it only because we didn't know what we had. And rather than reaching out to the company, to you guys, and saying, hey, can you help us do these reports and stuff? So if you're wanting to use it like that, make sure that you get some training on how to read those reports, exactly what it is that you're looking at, because had we stayed with that, you know, we'd probably been in a different situation than we are currently, you know, but we are right now. Going back to using it, having the know-how now with it, it's like night and day. So don't just take it, and that's with anything. Don't just go into it blindly thinking you know how to use it because you're an educator. You do need some education on the education materials.
Yeah, I think, you know, when you look at like those pages I showed you, you just see numbers, right? On one level, if it's just numbers and you look at the total score, you say, oh, one of the questions is, how does this compare to Renaissance Learning? And, you know, Renaissance Learning, they advertise themselves as a quick test, a quick screener. So essentially they're trying to measure, and I don't want to speak for them, but I mean, you know, their score is going to be a little simpler, where we're trying to dive down and say, I don't want to give people a math score, a single math score. I want to give you 44 scores. If you have 44 scores, you know exactly where they at in addition, where are they at in subtraction, where are they at in fractions, and our data will tie it to a skill concept, right? So that's really key difference. Now, in order to be able to read that, you need training. You do need training, because you don't know the drill down.
We're not just using Edge as far as, like, we are using it like benchmark assessments and diagnostic, but we're also using Iowa Flex and single subject tests. So we're using this as one key part of the data that we're looking at to make our instruction program better. But those programs that test, they don't have that Edge program built in where they can do those lessons individually. As far as some of those other ones like iReady, I've heard it's very similar. I haven't used iReady to know, you know, how it all works. My husband, he's doing a program Edgenuity, which it seems similar, but I don't have firsthand knowledge of some of those to be able to compare it to some of those other ones.
In my biased opinion, we're the best.
Yeah. Well, from what I've seen, well, the nice part about it is, like, since we are using it as a placement test for our students coming in to see where they are, what holes are they coming in from with the other schools that they're gone to, whether it's homeschool, public school, a different private school, when they're coming in, what holes are they coming in with? And because we're doing that process now, we're getting them hooked into, okay, you'd like to be here for 3rd grade, but you do have some holes. So if you still want to pursue enrollment with us, you need to work on the EDGE program to really get you caught up and solid with where our third graders or fourth graders currently are. And, you know, we're gonna have you continue to work on that, and then we're gonna check to see what progress you've made, so that when you come in, it's a much easier transition rather than you coming in low with holes and now we're stuck trying to remediate you then. So it is a complete program package, you know, so it is the best from what I've used.
So let me,
And I
let's
guess
wrap it.
to
Go ahead.
piggyback off what Melissa said, you have that data to communicate with parents. It's just not like
Yes.
you're saying, hey, they're behind, they need to work on some skills. You have, you know, a report you can hand to them. It shows them specifically where their student is at, what specific skills they need to work on. So there's the evidence right there.
Right.
So let me ask a high-level organizational question. A lot of people out there are probably about to implement change at their organizations, right? What advice would you give them, you know, to sort of get this initiative going at their own organization? I mean, obviously they can choose tools, and you know, there's a lot of great tools, but you know, what would you say is your advice to sort of get someone who's about to do what you guys started, you know, in the past already?
I think one of the really big successful key points that we had was having somebody in place. Like for me, it's DeSaro, and I just usually stick with last name, so that's why I'm not calling him Mr. DeSaro. I just usually always call him DeSaro, but he's my data coach, and that's a really broad title that he has. But without him being able to have the time, that's his dedicated job. Like he's not doing classes, he's not doing anything else. He is looking at how are our teachers using this program, how are our students responding to this program, as well as all the other testing that we're doing. Because he does that, as well as handle some of our service plans that we have from students that come over with, you know, with an IEP or 504 to us, or we need to create one based on their educational needs. Having somebody that has the time, because it does take a lot of time to do this and to get it implemented and to learn the program, because teachers are busy. They don't have time to sit down and even watch a quick thing, but they do have 5 minutes to go to DeSaro and say, hey, can you show me how to do this real quick? And because he has the time to be able to invest in looking at the program, it's not a hard thing to do, but it does take time. Anything is going to. So they can go to him, he can show them. He can even pull the report for him real quick and say, hey, when you get 2 more minutes, come back and I'll show you how to do it. But to me, that was the key, is he could troubleshoot the kids with problems that they were having, the parents that were having issues, he was able to troubleshoot those. So it was somewhat of a tough sell for me to get an allocation for a data coach with my board, but that I think they, you know, have definitely seen the value in it, having somebody dedicated that can can organize, can set all those things up and look at that. That is key, is having somebody solid that can do those things, or at least even half a day. It really does, you know, it's not as simple as just 1, 2, 3, boom, we're done. It does take, it takes some time.
Well, that's great. I mean, that's some really good words of wisdom. So that's good to hear. I think we should, to keep everyone on time, we should wrap things up. So right here, you see from the screen, if anybody has any questions, I know there's some pricing questions, we'll get back to you because those questions are recorded. But you can reach out to your Precept marketing educational consultant. Kim's information is here as well. She supports all of Precept customers as well as Precept. So I want to thank Melissa and Michael so much for this. This has been so informative, and it's really, really insightful hearing everything you guys have done. And, you know, we're really impressed. So
thank you, Richard.
Thank you so much. Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you so much. And we will send you guys, everyone, a recording and also the slides. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.